Court is indeed now in session, ladies and gentlemen. A little intro that I'm going to start doing for this season as we welcome you all to this debut of Season 2 of the PCBC. I am your host, Noah Sipbauer, and for those who may not know what the PCBC is, if you are joining me for the first time, the PCBC is a title I created last year. Stands for the Pennsylvania College Basketball Court. This is the series where we talk here on Instagram Live about the PSAC, Pennsylvania State Athletic Conference Basketball Conference, and we mostly talk about IUP, as you can tell by the background there. So this is my office where we will be filming most of my episodes, pretty much all of them, but there may be a couple times where I may have to move. But anyways, if you're joining me for the first time, welcome to the show. If you're returning, awesome to have you back. So we got a lot to cover because it's been a little over 3 months since the 2023-24 PSAC, the 2023-24 Division II basketball season ended. And it's been roughly about 3 months since Gannon last played a basketball game. So let's start off where we left off from our previous episode in April. In early April. Let's get started. We got a lot to cover. So, starting off with Gannon, team that last season was the biggest surprise of the year. They went 3-23 in 2022-23 season. Last year, they bring in a head coach from the defending national champions in the 39-0 Nova Southeastern and an assistant coach, Jordan Fee. Carries the program, brings in a ton of talent to the roster from last season. Go on an historic run. They go 20-2 in conference play with a record of 32-3 overall. They've ended up winning the PSAC tournament for the first time since 2015, while also not playing on their home court. Their home facility of the Highmark Event Center was going through major renovations through its 75th year as a facility. And they ended up moving to the Haggerty Family Event Center at Cathedral Prep High School. Again, I feel like it was a little bit tacky for a PSAC Conference Championship game to be played on a high school court and an Atlantic Regional Championship game to be played on you guessed it, a high school basketball court. But I guess that's what happens when you don't have another facility open at the time. Although I would have liked to see them play at Erie Insurance Arena. That would have actually been something interesting. Gannon ended up winning not only the PSAC and the Atlantic Regional Tournament, they ended up going to the Elite Eight for the first time in program history, where they unfortunately were destroyed by Cal State San Bernardino, a team that would eventually lose in the Final Four to the team that would end up actually being the runner-ups in Nova Southeastern, who were the 2023 national champions. Cal, a team that went 28-5 last season, 19-3 in conference play, made it all the way to the PSAC championship game in Erie against Gannon, where KJ McClure, Region Player of the Year, the Division II Atlantic Regional Player of the Year, the Division II PSAC West Athlete of the Year. He was first team all PSAC, and alongside being only one of two players from the Atlantic region to be named an All-American by the NABC, alongside a guy from Gannon named Joshua Hoffa, who had a phenomenal transition in his second season with Gannon and had a lot of success with the pressure of the trap and high scoring offense of Gannon from last season. Gannon had one of the best teams in the country for points per game last season. SRU last year, Cal, they ended up going all the way to the round of 32. They were a sub-regional host because of Gannon's women's basketball team also winning the PSACs. They ended up getting number one seed in both men's and women's basketball, which meant half the games were played at Cal's Convocation Center, in which I attended the first round matchups last season. Cal ended up losing to the eventual runner-ups in the Atlantic region, the University of Charleston, team that also has been dealing with a lot of change in this past offseason. SRU, they finished the season 16-14 with a 13-9 record in conference play. They had the tiebreaker over IUP due to the head-to-head matchups. Slippery Rock, they had a pretty decent team last season, going 16-14. They made it to the PSAC quarterfinals, where they were unfortunately embarrassed by Cal. It was 91-57 last year. They ended up losing a big name in their system, a guy that I thought was going to probably be a mainstay for SRU, but we'll talk about him momentarily. Mercyhurst, a team that went 15-16 in its final season in the PSAC. As you may know, earlier in March, the Lakers are made the jump to Division I. They're playing in the Northeast Conference starting this upcoming fall. So that's a big loss for not only the PSAC West, but for the PSAC as a whole, as the PSAC West, heading into the 24-25 season, has only 8 teams, compared to the PSAC East, which still has all 9 of its members at this time. Seton Hill, a team that went 16-13 last season. They went 11-11, some big wins for them. They won at IUP, which was only their second win in 25 matchups against IUP. They ended up losing in the first round matchup to Slippery Rock at Morrow Fieldhouse in the PSAC tournament first round. Edinburgh last season, they finished 7-21, finished 7th in the PSAC West with a 6-16 record. Their top player was Bernie Blunt, a guy who is actually still in the transfer portal right now, as we so speak. A guy that I would not be surprised if he goes back to D1. He was originally a D1 player at Quinnipiac University, then went to Harecombe Community College, former school of Chucky Humphreys, an IUP alumni. And then he went to Edinburgh, so now he is transferring to his 4th school in 4 years. Hard to believe that. Clarion, a team that had an interesting season after what was a very disappointing year in 2023. I believe they only won 2. They won 2 games in 2023. This season, they literally did a lot better this year. They finished the regular season on a good note. They ended up winning their final game of the season at Indiana, a team that had won the previous 25 matchups between those two programs. Clarion gets a massive win, but at what cost? Clarion loses basically their entire roster from last season. They had some really close games last year, believe it or not. This was a competitive Clarion team that could have won 10 games if they had the chance. And then the biggest dud of the PSAC West last year was, of course, Pitt Johnstown, team that I thought was going to be maybe a 5 or 6 seed. Go on to go 6-22 last season with the 3rd worst record overall, tied for the 2nd worst record in the PSAC in terms of conference play record. They went 4-18 last year and went 6-22 overall, which was very unfortunate for Pitt Johnstown. And then they ended up losing their best player, Andrew Shaw, halfway through the season after losing to IUP at home in a 1-point thriller. Again, 6-22, that was the 3rd worst record overall in the PSAC last season. To the East, Lock Haven was number 1 seed in the PSAC East, 18-4 record. They went 21-8, so their first number 1 seed in quite a while. Millersville had a fantastic season, their best season in the PSAC overall, most wins in one season for PSAC wins in program history with 18. There were 3 teams in the PSAC East actually that had 18 wins. The third one would be East Stroudsburg, a team that also did not make the Atlantic Region Tournament, along with Lock Haven, although Lock Haven, I think, should have made the Atlantic Region Tournament. Millersville was the only team from the PSAC East to actually make the Atlantic Region Tournament, along with Gannon and Cal. Those were your 3 of the 8 teams that made the Atlantic Region Tournament last season. Westchester going 19-11 with a 15-7 record. lost to Lock Haven in the PSAC quarterfinals. East Stroudsburg, yeah, it was a 24-point loss. East Stroudsburg, the 3 seed, playing at Millersville. That was a really good game. Millersville losing by 8, eventually Millersville winning by 8 in the PSAC quarterfinals. Shepherd, 13-15 last season. They went 10-12. Believe it or not, there was a team that was 10 games under 500 in conference play that made the PSAC tournament and ended a 11-year playoff drought. That was Mansfield, team that's basically been a bottom 3 team in the PSAC East for the longest time. Went 6-16 in conference play, which was apparently enough to get in as a 6 seed, and went 8-20 on the season. Shippensburg, last year's biggest dud of the entire PSAC conference, as I crowned them the biggest dud of last year, went 8-20 after being a 1 seed and making the PSAC semifinals just a year ago before this massive disappointment of a season, going 4-18 in conference play, and then tied for the worst record overall in conference play with 3-19. Those were Bloomsburg and Kutztown, 2 teams that were pretty bad last in 2023. They were pretty bad again. Bloomsburg finished with a 5-23 record. Kutztown finished with the worst record overall at 4-24 last season. So, let's get to a big thing that's going to be happening this coming Sunday. At 6 p.m. at the Memorial Fieldhouse in Indiana, the IUP alumni are going to be playing against a team that has been created by head coach and former IUP legend Dante Lombardi. His squad of Division II alumni, known as the D2 Waymakers, will play a group of alumni players that played for IUP. Some of the notable names that have been mentioned to play for IUP that are going to be playing or could be playing are Monty Foster, Dave Morris, Chucky Humphreys, Shondale Jones, Malik Miller, William Brunwick, and Marco Kriovicic. All these guys were members of at least one or multiple PSAC Conference champion teams. Armani Foster was part of multiple champion teams in 2019, 2020, and 2022. Dave Morris, 2022 and 2023. Chucky Humphreys won 2019 and 2020. Shondale Jones won 3 in 2020, 2022, 2023. Malik Miller won 2, 2019 and 2020. William Brunwick and Marco Kriovicic are 2019 winners with IUP. For the D2 Waymakers, they got 2 incredible legends on their team. Ethan Porterfield, who was one of the best players in program history. You could make an argument he is the best in program history. He will be part of the D2 Waymakers program team that is going to be playing in Lexington, Kentucky in approximately 8 days from now. They will be playing the Auburn alumni, the team that is based from Auburn University. And then Jacobo Diaz, who also won a PSAC Conference Championship in 2019. Ethan Porterfield, part of 3 conference championship teams, 2020, 2022, and 2023. So that is going to be a very exciting event to be put on. Entry is $10 for anyone wanting to attend the games. I will most likely be in attendance for that. It was something really exciting to see some of the guys that I know pretty well. It's going to be an awesome moment for these guys just to catch up and get to play against one another. It should be really exciting. So the transfer pool, my goodness, we had a lot of transfers, and there's probably some I honestly just forget off of memory. Here's a list of names that I have already. We got a lot of them. Don't you worry. Joshua Mahafo, we'll start with him. We'll get to the next big name next. Joshua Mahafo from Gannon University transfers to Robert Morris University after his incredible season at Gannon, which saw him be the leader and win PSAC and Atlantic Region MVPs. Goes down to Robert Morris. for the upcoming season. Head coach Jordan Fee resigned. As mentioned before, he resigned shortly after Gannon's Elite Eight loss to Cal State San Bernardino. He makes the transition to D1 as well. He's an assistant coach at Florida Atlantic University. Cam Kearney of Clarion, he makes the transition to D1 as well. He is at Niagara University in Niagara Falls, New York. Another Clarion transfer, Steve Kelly, as my buddies Brandon and Ryan would say, Blues Clues. He is transferring from Clarion to Edinburgh for his final season. KJ McClurg, regional player, as I said before, moments ago, Atlantic Region Player of the Year, PSAC first team member, PSAC West Athlete of the Year, makes a transition to D1 as well, going from Cal to Division I program Longwood. Justice Schultz, the PSAC East Athlete of the Year and first team all PSAC East, makes a transition from Lock Haven to Division I program Siena. And then Division II names, Day Waters transfers from Millersville to Slippery Rock University. Andrew Shaw transferring from Pitt Johnstown midway through the 23-24 season. He is transferring to West Liberty University. Jalen Stewart of Indiana University of Pennsylvania also making the transition to West Liberty. Desmond from Des Moines Area Community College is making the transition to Gannon. Derek James, part of the Gannon powerhouse squad from this past season, transferring from Gannon to St. Thomas Aquinas in New York. Michael Moore making the transition from D1 to D2, going from Winthrop University in Rock Hill, South Carolina to Slippery Rock University. And then a bunch of names for Gannon. A lot of players coming into Gannon from D1 and D2. Starting with Australian big man Tasman Goodrick making the transition from D1 to D2, from Cal State Baptiste to Gannon. Isaiah Warfield from D1 Howard to Gannon. Justin DeBuck and Lane Sarver, both from the University of Union in Tennessee, both going to Gannon. Michael Lugarati, a part of that massive powerhouse team in Gannon last year, transferring to Tiffin University, part of the GMAC conference. And then Siraj Ali is one of the dynamic duos of Mansfield's incredible team last year that made their first appearance in the PSAC tournament in 11 years, makes a transfer to Millersville University. One thing I wanted to mention, and then a couple of names to be on the list that are on the list that are still they are in the transfer portal, but they have not found a home yet. Andy Succelli of Pitt Johnstown. Bertie Blunt, one of the big names that's still out there right now, is still on the trade market from the transfer portal from Edinburgh. And then Jomo Goings from Slippery Rock University is still in transfer portal at this time. Another cool thing that just happened maybe about 2 hours ago, the 2026 Division I Final Four is set to be held in Indianapolis, Indiana, from April 2nd to April 6th, 2026. They now have made the announcement that the Division II and the Division III national championship games will be held at the facility of Lucas Oil Stadium. And then the semifinals and finals of the NIT tournament also will be played at Lucas Oil Stadium. So very cool to see that all these games are going to be played as part of a very special moment, as Indiana is a very big state when it comes to basketball. Now, let's get to the 2024-25 roster as it stands right now. But before that, some of the departures. There's a lot of them. We had 8 players from IUP's 23-24 team leave Indiana for either because of they transferred somewhere or they graduated from the program. Starting off with Jalen Stewart. As I said, he played for IUP for 2 seasons. Had a bit of a down year compared to his first year in Indiana. Part of that really good team that won the PSAC championship in 2023. He, again, is transferring to West Liberty University, part of the Mountain East Conference. KJ Rhodes, another part of the trio of PSAC conference championship wins in 2020, 2022, and 2023, has graduated. He had a fantastic senior season after being a role player for the first couple years being in the program. Jordan Lambert, a guy I was hoping was going to stay at IUP, decided to transfer. He was in the transfer portal for the longest time until about yesterday. He has made a decision to transfer to Coastal Bend University, located in Beeville, Texas. They are a JUCO college basketball program. Ethan Porterfield, part of 3 PSAC conference championship teams in 2020, 2022, and 2023. Second highest, the player with the second highest point total for a career in program history. And is top 5 in pretty much every major category for IUP. Rebounds, points per game, total points, 3-point field goal percentage, 3-point field goals made, blocks, any category you can think of, he's pretty much in the top 5. Really unfortunate to lose him. He was a big part of IUP success. Also won 2022 he was the 2022 and 2023 PSAC tournament MVP, along with being the 2022 Atlantic Region MVP when IUP made the Final Four just a couple years ago. Bryce Radford, a guy who had played at IUP his first 3 seasons before transferring to his hometown in Beckley, West Virginia, to play for West Virginia Tech. Then in his final year of eligibility, due to the injury of Dallas Dillard, about a third of the season in, Lombardi, Dante and Joe Lombardi are able to bring in Bryce Radford on a final year of eligibility for him, and ends up going to play for IUP. Plays in all 20 games, starts in IUP's final 20 games of the season. Part of a couple of PSAC conference championship teams, 2020 and 2022. If there was a comeback player of the year award for PSAC basketball, this guy would have absolutely won this award by a landslide. Gabriel Romero-Sanz, he was one of 3 freshmen from the 2023-24 recruiting class to be entered to IUP. He was the only one that actually did not play for IUP, as both Sarp Furton and Jordan Lambert both were able to have both played at some point in the 23-24 season. Gabriel Romero-Sanz makes a transfer to Shippensburg University, part of the PSAC conference. Josh Pudno, after playing a couple years in Georgia as part of the Young Harris College in the PBC, made the transition to Indiana last season. Had a pretty good season for Putno. He also graduated as well, along with Radford, also graduated. And then lastly, Dolan Waldo, guy who had been in the IUP program. He won a PSAC conference championship in 2023 as a redshirt freshman. Makes a transit, had a decent start to the season, then became a bit of a bench player, and then played a little bit later in the season when IUP was going to most likely be like a 3 or 4 seed. So they ended up using him in a couple of games. Makes a transition. He is transferring to Penn State Behrend in Erie, Pennsylvania. All right, so now let's look at the roster, what we have so far for players before we get to the transfers and the incoming freshman recruiting class so far. As of right now, there are 12 players on the roster as of this recording. Most likely we'll see a couple more names be named to be going to IUP. We start with our main guy, who is going to most likely be the catalyst for IUP's success coming this upcoming season, is Garvin Clark. He transferred from D1 Akron to play at IUP. And in his first season, he averaged 18.1 points per game, 7.5 rebounds, shooting 42% from the floor, just a little under 26% from three-point range, and shot about 65% from free throw line. He was a first-team All PSAC West player, and I think right now I have him as a runner-up right now. I have him as a favorite to be in consideration for PSAC West Athlete of the Year. I think he's going to have a big season coming up in his final year of eligibility. Denzel Casabile was one of a couple of players that did not play last season. He was a guy that came from Community College of Montana, had pretty good numbers, and then he ended up missing the entire season due to knee problems, and they medically redshirted him last season. He's a guy that I'm really excited about. I think he's going to bring I think he's going to be a role player for IUP. He may end up starting on day one, but if he doesn't, I think he's going to be a very reliable role player for sure. Another guy who I think is going to have a big season coming up after missing the final 20 games of the season was Dallas Dillard. He was one of the three captains along with KJ Rhodes and Ethan Porterfield. Dallas Dillard scored in his first 10 games, only 10 games of the season, scored 15.8 points per game, 6.3 rebounds, shooting 43.5% from the floor, a little over 30% from three, and a little over 76% from the free throw line. He's a guy that brings a lot of defensive swagger to the program, and he is, along with Garvin Clark, are the two main guys that are big, the two big names for IUP, as they lost a lot of scoring depth heading into this season. Demir Brooks, a guy that was a big name as a backup to Tommy Lyman in the 2023 PSAC on the IUP team from a couple years ago, had his spot taken away from KJ because of KJ Rhodes. Brooks did play pretty decently in the games he ended up playing. He scored 3.2 points per game, 2.7 rebounds per game, shot 58% from the floor, only took one 3-point field goal attempt, which he did not make, and then shot 38.5% from the free throw line. Anthony Watson, a guy who came from Butler County Community College, did not play at all last season. He had wrist surgery halfway through the season and missed the remainder of the year. Anthony Watson is going to be an interesting player. I'm not sure what he will bring to the table. I think he's a very reliable defensive player. We'll see what Lombardi decides to do with him. Sarb Fern was one of the two freshmen, is the only freshman from last season that is still on the roster. He had a fantastic season. Although his scoring numbers don't say much, he was a very reliable defensive player. He had a very sneaky tactic of going behind the basketball player and stealing the ball away from them. He was a very sneaky player, and I think he's going to be very reliable in the defensive category. I think he'll be a rotational player, but I think he's definitely going to be someone to keep an eye on next season. He scored 1.6 points per game, 2.1 rebounds per game, shot a little under 34% from the floor and 33% from three. He only had 2 free throw attempts the entire season, in which he did not make either of those 2 free throw attempts. Callum McNamara is still on the roster. Big Mac is still returning for most likely his last year of eligibility. He finished the season with 1.8 points per game, 1 rebound per game, shooting 50% from the floor, did not take any 3-point field goal attempts, and only had 2 free throw attempts the entire season, in which he hit 1 out of 2. He was a guy that played as a rotational player late in games and ended up unfortunately getting a concussion about halfway through the season and did not return for the remainder of the year. Some of the transfers. So the transfers are going to be interesting so far. I like what they're bringing to the program. Starting off, we have a guy that played from a rival of IUP's, Mercyhurst University to be exact. Luke Triggs enters IUP with 2 years of eligibility left. He is from Gainesville, Virginia. He shot 53.8% from the floor last season, shot about 39% from three, and 78% from the free throw line. A guy that I think is going to be most likely will be a day one starter. He's a 6'7" power forward, which is really nice to have in that, especially with IUP losing so much talent from last season. 8.2 points per game and 3.7 rebounds per game. Next is Alfonso Pickens Jr. He was a D2 player from Gannon before making the transition to Albany Tech, a JUCO college program in Georgia. He shot 38.9% from the floor, 23.9% from three-point range, 59% from the free throw line, 4.9 points per game, 1.2 rebounds per game. Again, he is from Erie, Pennsylvania, so he's going to be an interesting player to bring into the program. The last transfer so far that IUP has brought in is a guy that head coach Joe Lombardi is really excited about. He's a D1 transfer to go play to come here to Indiana. That is Christian Moore. He played last season for the University of New Hampshire. Played in 31 games last season. He shot 41.3% from the floor, 31.2% from three-point range, and a little under 62% from the free throw line. Scored 5.5 points per game and 1.6 rebounds. And he is from Virginia Beach, Virginia. The two freshmen that are on the recruiting class so far for the 24-25 season, we will start with Ian Herring. He is from the Kiski School in Salzburg, Pennsylvania, but his hometown is Coriopolis, Pennsylvania. He is a 6'6" point guard, which you hardly rarely find. So it's going to be really interesting to see what happens with Ian Herring. I think he's a guy that will definitely be a rotational player in year one. I think he's a starter by year two. I think he'll start in his sophomore season, if not late into this freshman season. Another guy I'm really excited about is from McDowell High School. He was the District 10 6A Player of the Year. Ty Grove, a guy that ended up being a very big player for McDowell. He is from Erie, Pennsylvania. He's a guy that actually reminds me a little bit of a iconic legend who just graduated this past season, Ethan Porterfield. He's a 6'7" power forward. He and Ian Herring are both playing in tournament games right now, and so far they both have looked really good, to say the least. I'm very excited about these two upcoming freshmen. I think these guys will be part of the future for IUP in the next 4 to 5 years. So the schedule. Let's get to the schedule. I'm very excited about this. The schedule was released in September of 20. It wasn't released until late, closer towards November. In September, believe it or not. The schedule got released almost 2 months earlier than what it was last year. Hard to believe. So the schedule goes like this. So the first two games are going to be played in Charleston, West Virginia, at the Worley Innovation Center. 2 games against the Mountain East Conference opponents. Starting off with Glenville State. Glenville State last season, pretty decent program. Nothing too special for them. Their women's program's pretty good, from what I remember. But yeah, not too bad of a team. They should be a pretty competitive team next season. Glenville State. And then they take on the Mountain East Conference champions on November 9th. They take on the University of Charleston, a team that lost its head coach recently due to his resignation and deciding to go on to greater pastures. Then they will head to Ashland, Ohio at the Charles Cates Gymnasium to face 2 teams from the Great Midwest Athletic Conference. They take on Tiffin University as their first matchup. Tiffin last season went 18-12 with an 11-9 record in conference play. And then on the 17th, they take on Ashland, who went 17-11 last year with an 11-9 record in conference play. Charleston last year, as I mentioned, The PSAC, they went all the way to the Atlantic Region Championship game before losing at the buzzer to Gannon. Charleston went 29-5 last year with a 17-3 record in conference play. Again, winners of the Mountain East Conference Tournament. Glenville State went 14-16 with an 8-12 record in conference play. Then PSAC play begins for IUP. They have 2 games right out of the gate. They'll take on Shippensburg, which is going to be a familiar sight for Gabriel Romero-Sands as part of Shippensburg University's program, will be making his return to the Kovalchik in late November, followed by a matchup with Lock Haven on Saturday, November 23rd. Then the 27th, they will take on Lincoln University of Pennsylvania. A couple of these matchups are actually first-time matchups, which will be really exciting. We'll talk about that actually here in just a moment. Lincoln last year, they went 10-7 last year with a record of 7-3 overall in conference play. Or 17-13 overall, and then they went 10-7 in conference play. Lock Haven, again, was pretty decent, pretty good last year. Shippensburg was not that good last year. South Carolina Beaufort is up next. This is going to be an interesting matchup because they're in the second season of their program's history. They just came off their first season in the PBC. They were a pretty decent program last year. And they have a former head coach. Their head coach was a former assistant under head coach Joe Lombardi. Ron Fondola was their head coach last season in year 1. They finished second to last in the PBC last year. They finished 3-15 in conference play and finished with a record of 10-16. And a former player from IEP that won PSAC conference championships with them in 2020 and 2022, Kyle Pulse, will also be making his return to the Kovalchik in his final year of eligibility. After that 4-game home stretch, the IUP Crimson Hawks will travel east for 2 games, starting on Friday, December 6th at Shepherd University at the Butcher Center in Shepherdstown, West Virginia, and then head up northeast to Westchester, Pennsylvania at the Hollinger Fieldhouse to take on the Golden Rams on December 7th. Then the Crimson Hawks will return home 10 days later to take on the worst team in the PSAC from this past season in the Kutztown Bears. Then they will end the 2024 calendar year by traveling to the Pasillo Gymnasium in Millersville, Pennsylvania to take on the Marauders. And then the new year begins on January 2nd at home against a team from the President's Athletic Conference, a D3 program, and a school that is roughly about 35 minutes north of where I am right now in Thiel College. So very exciting to see these two teams meet again. The matchup between South Carolina Beaufort and IUP will be a first meeting between these two programs. So very exciting. And then the matchup, I believe, between IUP and Ashland is a first-time matchup, or it's Tiffin. One of those 2 games is a first-time meeting between the 2 programs. Let's see. While we look for that, then PSAC West Conference basketball begins. And yes, that is Ashland and IUP will meet for the first time ever on November 17th, and then IUP and University of South Carolina at Beaufort will meet for the first time ever on December 2nd in Indiana. Back to the schedule. On January 6th, the Crimson Hawks begin their big part of the PSAC West Conference play. They'll take on Edinburgh at the Macomb Fieldhouse on January 6th. Then on January 8th, the IUP Crimson Hawks will start a 3-game home stretch, starting with the PSAC champions and the Atlantic Region champions in Gannon. Then they'll have a week's rest before returning home coming back home on January 15th at home against Pitt Johnstown. And then the 18th, January 18th, they will host Seton Hill. The 22nd, they will travel to their arch rivals in SRU at Morrow Fieldhouse to take on the Rock. Then the 25th, they will return home to take on Clarion, team that they are most likely trying to get revenge after their 25-game winning streak against Clarion was broken on Senior Day last year in March. Then IUP travels back south to California to take on the Vulcans on the 29th of January at the Convocation Center. Then about a week later, IUP returns back into action at home against Penn State U Boys of the Penn State University Athletic Conference, a D3 program. That game for February 5th at the KCAC. Then the Crimson Hawks will have a 2-game road stretch starting at the Highmark Events Center in Erie, Pennsylvania, as they take on the Gannon Knights, before traveling back south to Johnstown to take on the Mountain Cats of UPJ at the UPJ Sports Center. And IUP will return home on February 15th at home against Edinburgh, followed by a matchup traveling northeast to Seton Hill, about a 45-minute drive on US 119. Actually, southwest, my bad, not northeast. Then they will host their final 2 home games of the season on February 22nd and 26th, respectively, with hosting SRU on February 22nd. And IUP will finish their home stretch at home stretch with California on February 26th before ending the regular season on March 1st at Clarion at the Tippin Gymnasium. Moments ago, I had just released a picture of the schedule on Twitter. So if you have a chance, go look at that. It will be on my second It's on my second Twitter page, my IUP Twitter profile that I have. So looking at the schedule, it's pretty interesting to see. We got some new teams that I've never seen before. Tiffin, Ashland, Lincoln, PA, South Carolina, Beaufort, Kutztown. They haven't played in a while. Teal, they haven't played. I don't even know how long it's been since they played Teal. Let's actually look. Last time IUP played, according to this, it says the last time they played Glenville State was 2015. Last time IUP and University of Charleston faced each other. Actually, I'm not sure. This might be a first. No, they've played them before. It just doesn't say when. They don't have it written. Tiffin, it's been a while since they played Tiffin. Ashland, again, first-time matchup. Shippensburg, they and IUP played last year. IUP and Lock Haven played last year. IUP and Lincoln, according to the last time they faced, was in 2016 in Indiana. IUP and South Carolina Beaufort, that's a first-time matchup. IUP and Shepherd have played last year. IUP absolutely destroyed them. IUP and Westchester, they haven't played in a while. I was going to say like 2021, I think, was the last time, or 2023, they played back-to-back years. So 2023 was the last time they played in Westchester. Kutztown and IUP, last time these two teams met was in 2022, which they won by 11 points in Indy. Millersville, we haven't seen them in about 2 years, I believe. IUP's actually won the last 11 matchups between those two programs. They did meet in the 2022 PSAC Conference Championship game, which IUP won. IUP and Teal, it's been a long time since IUP and Teal played. The last time was in 2011. They actually played each other in 2010 and 2011. IUP has done pretty well against Teal. I mean, that should be a pretty easy matchup, I would assume. IUP, Gannon, Pitt Johnstown played last year. IUP went 2-0 against Edinburgh last year. IUP went 0-3 against Gannon. They went 2-0 against Pitt Johnstown, 1-1 against Seton Hill, 1-1 against SRU, 1-1 against Clarion. They went 0-2 against Cal. I believe this is also a first-time matchup. Penn State this will be a first-time matchup, but they haven't played in a very long time. Going back to that list once more. Handy-dandy IUP history chart list. Penn State U boys. No, this is sweet. Okay, yeah, no, this will only be the second time they've ever faced each other. So, interesting. Gannon, again, 0-3. Pitt, Johnstown, Edinburgh. So, yeah, that's pretty much the schedule for right now. Again, the big games that are going to be exciting with players returning to the Kovalchik. November 22nd against Shippensburg. And December 12th, head coach Ron Fondula and Kyle Pulse will both return to the Kovalchik for the first time as visiting players. Very exciting to say the least. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what happens this upcoming season. There will be most likely a lot of stuff. There will be more stuff going on as the final couple months come into play with recruiting and transfers in the next couple months. So I most likely will return in September to make a somewhat preview of what to expect heading into next season. Starter predictions. So two guys I already know that are going to start right away. Garvin Clark and Dallas Dillard are automatically my two locks so far. I would say Luke Triggs is probably another big lock for IUP. I think he's going to start. He has a lot of experience. He played in 49 games in his career for Mercyhurst and did not start a single game for them. So kind of interesting to say the least. And then there's a bunch of names. I don't really know. They could go with a lot of options, honestly, with the other two names. I would say Christian Moore is probably another one. They could go with Ian Herring maybe, or Alfonso Pickens Jr. They have a lot of guys that are like, I don't think are locks, but they're like, I would say there's a lot of good rotational players. You have like 3 or 4, 5 rotational players. You're in good shape to set up for a good season next year. So I would say Clark, Dillard, Triggs are top 3 right now. I would say Christian Moore and maybe Demir Brooks to start the season. We might see Ty Grove and Ian Herring get a bunch of minutes in their freshman season. They're both very talented upcoming freshmen. This won't be like last year where they only had like one starter. Again, rotational players, I think Casable is another big name that could potentially start in the first couple games. So it's a lot of question marks compared to last season, because you knew last season it was going to be most likely Garvin Clark. Dallas Dillard was already going to start, and Ethan Porterfield was going to start. And then, you had Demir Brooks, and you had Jalen Stewart. He was going to be a starter from day one. So you had basically 4 out of 5 starters. This year, you only have maybe 2 at the minimum, and then it's a bunch of question marks. But I think it's going to be interesting to see what happens this upcoming season, to say the least. I most likely will return in September or October to do a preview to catch you up on what's going on between now and the beginning of the school year. So it's going to be very interesting to see what happens next. But that is going to be it for this first episode of Season 2. Hope you guys enjoy the rest of your summer. Stay safe. Stay healthy, stay hydrated with this hot heat. I know I'm wearing a hoodie. That's because I was planning on wearing this for my first episode. This, and then most likely I'll probably just wear something more casual for the next episode. So until then, thank you guys for joining. Hope you guys, again, have a good rest of your summer, and I will see you guys very soon. Till then, court is now adjourned. Case is dismissed.